Okay, so we should be live now and welcome everybody out. And last week, actually 2 weeks ago, we talked about, hey, mister, can you spare a dime? Which was talking about purchasing silver dimes for investment or barter or whatever. And so that was one of the things we talked about. And then we talked about, had a session on salt and which is the best salt because, everybody seems to agree that table salt is toxic for you. But what is good salt? And, um,
So, do you know what? I did a little bit of my own research on that. We use a lot of Himalayan salt in our household. So I went out and looked at the Celtic salt, and I'm sticking with Himalayan salt. It just had a broader range of minerals and nutrients. And for the price of Celtic salt, I just think I'll stick with Himalayan salt for now.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I did the same research on Redmond salt just because I can get that readily here at very reasonable prices in the 50-pound bags. And it was kind of the same way. It had like 121 trace minerals in it. Of course, some of them are things that you don't necessarily want. Maybe like uranium and some things like that. But, the numbers are so minute. It's down in the parts per million. But
Uh-huh.
but anyway,
And that was the Redmond salt?
yeah, from you.
And we now have a bag of it,
We have
thanks to Sunrise.
We have more than one bag, but we have one fresh bag.
And where is that mined out of?
It's I guess it's Redmond, Utah. Not sure where that is, but
Yeah.
Most of the production goes into livestock salt, trace mineral salt. Of course, it all comes out of the same place, and it's just a matter of how fine you grind it.
We joked a little bit about getting a salt lick.
So anyway, and then we talked about a little bit about a ice maker review and a new type of garden bed that's under $100. So anyway, that's what we talked about 2 weeks ago. Anybody has anything else to say about that? This would be the time.
So have they ever come out fully and said what happened in Locust Grove to their water supply?
To my
No.
knowledge, no, and we were in that, we were at Lake of the Woods last night, and had several people there who had experienced it, and nobody knew, and they all suspect, like I do, that it was an inside job or an inside accident, and they don't want to admit
And covered up.
Yeah.
They don't want to advertise it.
But I, that event has made me resolve to every one of these meetings we should talk a little bit about water, because we always talk about food, but without water you don't get to get very hungry.
Yeah there's huge consequences of no water.
I have a question about water.
What's that?
I have like a 300 and some foot deep well that Archie dug for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know exactly how many feet it is from the top of the well down to the water level in the well. But is there a pump that you can buy that it works off of electricity? If the electricity goes out, out of luck. But I mean, I do have a generator,
Mm-hmm.
and my well pump is on the circuit with the generator. But I've got
So
15
so
or
your generator will produce 240-volt power?
yeah, what I've done is I had um, a parallel switch installed and a parallel circuit installed that I can hook up a 9400 uh, generator to, and it powers all the main things in the house. It doesn't power the air conditioning unit, but I can live without air conditioning.
Right.
But it does operate the pump, yeah.
Okay.
But I got maybe 15, 20 gallons of gasoline
Yep.
On hand
That you rotate, right?
that I rotate, yeah.
Okay.
And that's probably enough to do me for 4 or 5 days. But I was without electricity in Richmond, in Henrico County, the outskirts of Richmond, for 5 weeks.
Oh my.
Yeah, Hurricane Isabel. Yeah, it knocked the power down in the Tuckahoe Swamp,
Oh
and
wow.
it took them 5 weeks, and we didn't have a redundant. The housing development that we lived in didn't have a redundant circuit, so we were without power for every house around us was without power for 5 weeks.
Yeah. And that's been my take on it, at least as an insurance position, that number one, if we really have a life-changing event, electricity is not sustainable.
Yeah,
And then if we go one step further, a generator is not sustainable.
Yep.
So my take on it is that you should have a hand pump if that's possible.
well, that's my question. Can you buy a pump on the market that you could have available as standby, and in the event, I guess, the power went out, you just go out and take the top off your well and get down to the
Yeah.
well opening and
Yeah,
stick a pipe.
what I'd recommend, and do this before we get our fall rains, hopefully, is take a fishing pole and put a heavy cork on it, and let that out until it hits water, and then tighten it up, and then pull it out without reeling it in, and then measure that and see how far it is down to water. If it's like less than 70 feet or so, you can do pretty good with a hand pump that's not extremely expensive. They're a lot more expensive than they used to be, but like I'd say under $300. And matter of fact, if I don't think this will be the case, but if you're less than 26 feet, you can use the old-fashioned pitcher pumps, which are like under $50. But I suspect you won't have water that close,
Yeah.
or at least not dependably so.
So do you know where ours is?
I do.
I don't.
Do you know where?
We have had one for quite a number of years.
We've
never had to set it up.
One in 99, but it's never been installed. But anyway,
But how long would it take you to install it?
um, shouldn't take too long. Although ideally you would want to drill a hole in your well cap, which that could take longer than anything else.
Yeah,
You got a steel well cap like mine.
yeah.
But
All right.
But anyway, like I say, I mean the other option is but you gotta pull your well piping out is to use basically an old fashioned well bucket. You know what those are.
Yeah.
But they won't fit down in there with your well pipe in there. So and
So long ago, I had talked to your son Kyle about it, and he had, I think he called it a water hog that he had constructed out of PVC pipes, but it would allow him, once he took the wellhead off, it would allow him to run this PVC pipe down through the well pipes and into the water. And then when you pulled it up, a little flange closed, and then he could get however long his PVC pipe was full of water. But that allowed him access to the well manually, but you did have to dismantle the well head to get into the pipe to get into the water.
And I have that out in my barn, by the way, because his well in West Virginia wasn't big enough to support it. So
Oh,
So it was something he constructed himself.
yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
there about that time for some reason there was lots of stuff going on around the internet of how to do that. But
So maybe we need to have a face-to-face gathering to actually look at how some of these things could work.
yeah, not a bad idea. But if that would be possible. Yeah.
Or a well
Yeah.
hog party.
Yeah, you can live months without food, but you can't live but a few days without water.
Right. And of course the other option would be to buy a one of these Berkey water filters that they just gravity feed. And
Mhm.
if you got a pond or a stream or something
Yeah.
nearby that's hopefully not too contaminated,
Yeah.
could go that
Yeah,
way for drinking water.
I've got a couple of reverse osmosis backpack filters that work pretty good.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you could get enough water to drink
Yeah.
and do a little cooking with, I guess.
Yeah, but that's the other thing, I mean, all these numbers, show like, a gallon or 2 gallons per person per day. And boy, that's just really insufficient on a long period of time. I mean, that's fine for, a couple of days, but if it's stretched out for 30 days or so, you're going to need a lot more water than that.
Or how many weeks, Sam?
5.
That could have gotten really old. Did the city or somebody try to provide a source for you to be able to go get water?
Yeah, we got within 3 or 4 days, the supermarkets and everything were back open. So it was just, and we lived about 300 yards from supermarket, so we didn't have trouble getting water.
Where I grew up, we were on a well, and it was a community well, but it was also because of the refineries. It was the company, Phillips Petroleum.
Yeah.
Because we were Phillips, Texas, we were a company town. We were all on well water, and it was really good water. Well, 2 miles away was the next town, which is Borger. And we were 2 different school systems. We were 2 different entities entirely. We didn't have a dependency on each other for things, except we went and did a lot of shopping in Borger. But Borger switched over to getting lake water from a local after the dam had been built and this lake was had enough water. Well, Borger started using that as their water source. It was the most hideous, stinky water and horrible tasting, but it was, not germified, but it was a nightmare. And so people who had good friends in Phillips would bring all of their coolers and everything. And you didn't have all of the type of easy coolers that you got here now, but they'd bring every container that they could put water in to get enough potable drinking water for a week. You might take your bath in that other water, you might wash your clothes in it, but you surely didn't want to put it in your mouth because it just tasted so bad. And it was a long time before people quit. But they also, Borger had to set up a place where you could go fill up in the town itself and not depend on just friends from Phillips. But that is one of the things I'd wonder if communities have anything built in as a source if there is an event of any kind of disaster like that.
Generally, they don't here because, we got so much water here, it's never a problem.
Yeah.
Like out west.
Yeah, I also think it's a little tricky to, especially for water. I don't care if my community says that they've got enough water to share. I want my own.
Yeah.
I want to know that I have what I need, because then all of a sudden they've got a problem or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden it's like we can't secondary rely on them. I feel very strongly that we just need to figure out our wells and store some. We've got water in storage, even though we have a well, right? We're kind of like Sam. If the power goes out, our well goes down, and we now have a generator with a switch on it, and right. But all of those little steps to being truly independent from community, from government, I think is very wise.
Well, let's hold that thought and we'll talk about it a little more at the end. And we will talk about it every week from here to a life-changing event. So anyway, today in the market situation, markets were mixed today, and so it's kind of what I've been saying for a few weeks now is, have you started your diversification plan? If not, then when? The last few weeks were a gift, and so we've had some opportunities and still have some opportunities. Gold was up a little bit today, back over 2,500 at 2,517. Goldbacks were up about a nickel since last week to 498. So they keep pushing up towards that magic $5 price. And silver was up a few cents at 28.42. It's been kind of going nowhere quickly lately in a trading range, and gold to silver ratio is still 1:89. So silver is still cheap in comparison to gold. And we've talked about, some of y'all may haven't heard it, but Samsung came up with a silver solid state battery that could take over all the EV market. And if that happens, there's going to be a requirement for a lot of silver. So that's another thing that could be driving silver in the future. But by the way this works is, feel free to interrupt me at any time, and because I would rather have this be a discussion and not a lecture. So speak up if you got something. Tilton zeros were both up today, about a little less than $1. So that's been one of the few stellar performers in this market here lately, which are long-term treasury ETFs. Wheat was up 4 cents today. Seems to be holding up over that $5 mark for the last couple of weeks. And I consider that another gift too, to be able to buy $5 wheat. PDBA, which is a agricultural ETF, was down a little bit today at 35.32, and PDBC, which is a more broad commodity ETF. Has a lot of energy components in it. It was down below $13 today. So and even the industrial military complex were all the ETFs and stocks that I follow, every one of them was down today except for GE. GE was actually up. So I guess that means that world peace is breaking out. So anyway, I've been saying that the industrial military complex is one of those diversities that everybody should have some of, because it's the only sure thing, I think, in this economic environment. So U.S. oil is down below $67. And last week I said it was below $71. So it's come down even more. I was short that.
And we were down in Southwest Virginia this past weekend, and a lot of gas down there was $2.69, $2.70 a gallon.
It flabbergasts me how much difference there is between there and here, and why.
Yeah, I can't understand that either, because that's way remote from here. I would think your transportation costs would be.
Yeah, because I'm assuming all that comes out of the big tank farms there at in the Springfield area. They're on 95. And that's where our gas comes from anyway.
Yeah, well,
I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of a mystery. I mean, I know some of those people are poor down there and they can't afford much, but we can't either. But
yeah,
but anyway, oil is coming down, and
yeah. The closer we got to Culpeper, the higher the price kept getting.
yeah. And so usually when barrel of oil goes down, that's an indication that the demand is going down, which indicates recession, which I firmly believe we've been in for several months. But anyway, and when it goes up, it's either because of inflation or war.
Or an election.
Yeah. Yeah, down for an election.
Yeah.
The other stock that I've been following is WES, which is a pipeline company that pays a 9% dividend, and it's 44% owned by insiders, and they're not selling. And so that's a pretty good indication of a good value, I believe. So Bitcoin was up a little bit today after being down for the last 2 days. Before that, it was back above 57,000 today, and I just Friday went short on Bitcoin by buying BITI, and if you want to go long, you buy BITS, so you don't have to be a Bitcoin wizard or a crypto wizard to do that. You can do it out of any brokerage account. So anyway, and we've talked about the state of Wisconsin has a couple of Bitcoin ETFs, and expect more states' pension funds to do that for diversity's sake. And then recently, Ethereum has opened up 8 new ETFs, so you can trade that the same way. And Ethereum was up a little bit today at 23.83. And there again, you have Ethereum ETH you can buy, and ETHD if you want to short Ethereum. So, the other thing that's been in the news a lot is a lot of store closings. Lumber Liquidators is finally liquidating themselves. And I think it seemed like they had like 3,000 stores. It's amazing how many stores they had. So they tried to find a buyer, but nobody was interested. And Dollar Tree is going to close down a bunch of stores. Big Lots is going through its third bankruptcy, and I don't know whether they'll have any stores left over or not, but anyway, they're trying to reorganize, but they're going to close a lot of stores one way or the other. TJ Maxx closing stores, Macy's, Walgreens, and of course, each one of these affect employment, because there's people that work there. And, the fact that those people won't have money to spend, means that it's kind of a vicious circle that we get into. Makes more stores close. So the other thing that, of course, the not so rumors of wars. Middle East is a tinderbox, and of course, Ukraine is the story that just never ends. We also have a war on fossil fuels, a war on the middle class, especially in food, medicine, and housing. War on cash. I encourage people to use it while you got it, while you can, and do remember that even though there's businesses out there that that say they don't accept cash now, it is legal tender, and they actually are supposed to accept it even if they don't want to. So FedNow is now, or right after the election. It's open to anybody can open a FedNow account, and so you'd have an account with the Fed instead of with your local bank. You still might get at it through your bank, possibly. I'm not sure how that's going to work out, but anyway.
What would be the benefits of doing that?
The benefit of it is you get free, pretty much instant money transfer to any other FedNow account holder. So, basically like a free PayPal that works instantly. So
Okay.
that's the advantage. Of course, the disadvantage is that the government knows every transaction you ever made.
Yeah.
Like they don't already.
Well, depending on
Well,
what
currently there's things in place to try and buffer us from that, right? Like, I feel like credit cards know exactly where you're spending your money, but in order for the government, they have to subpoena those records from the bank with eyes wide open of what they're trying to do. But I feel like something like FedNow, they don't have that layer of kind of protecting the little person. It's just wide open for them. So I'll have to look more at FedNow.
Yeah, I mean, I might.
Well, usually though, I mean, I've been involved in those enough to know that those are court orders, and the court orders you not only to give the information to the government, but also not to let the party that you're giving it on know that you're giving it to the government. So
Right.
if you don't have any way of knowing if your records have been subpoenaed, or, well, you'd know if they were subpoenaed if you were in a lawsuit, but if it's a police investigation, you don't
You'd
know
never
unless,
know.
well, you'd know if you happen to check your financial records on a given day, but they're not
Interesting.
allowed to tell you. I mean, you have ways of finding out, but the bank or the credit card company can't call you up and say, "Hey, just to let you know that the FBI just subpoenaed all your financial records." If they do, then they can go to jail.
Yeah.
It's a contempt of court.
Yeah, they've got them scared. Just like if you want to pull out more than $10,000 of your money at the bank, they got to report that. Or if you do 5 transactions of $2,000, they're supposed to report that too. And that's even worse. That's structuring. So anyway.
Yeah, that's evidence of wrongdoing.
Yeah.
Considered the evidence of wrongdoing.
Yeah. So anyway, something to be aware of. Kind of gets back to why you might want to have that pot full of dimes in the future. war on food going around the world. You know, they don't want us lowly peons to grow our own food anymore. War on gardens, war on meat.
Say war on gardens. Who's conducting a war on gardens?
A lot of states are, and they're using the same thing that countries are using, especially over in Europe, and that you know that a gardener is just totally inefficient compared to a commercial producer, and so therefore they shouldn't be wasting resources that the state needs. You know, that's the philosophy behind it. Like back in the pandemic, the state of Michigan actually all the stores were not allowed to sell gardening seeds that spring of 2020. What do you think about that? State order.
Was that to keep people in the house or what?
I don't know.
I mean, was that the logic that they used?
I'm
It
not.
just seems weird.
There was no logic behind it, like so many things at that time. But I'm not sure what their craziness was. I mean, it was a time of shortages when you would think you would want people to, you know, the victory gardens to sprout up, but this comes back to my experience of working for the man for many years. They're not always in our best interest. They say they're here to help you. Like Reagan said, better run the other way. So, of course, my favorite is the war on cancer, which, in my opinion, has been surrendered. So, seasonal information. Plant trees in the fall is the best time. So, or to be ordering those if you have something that you want to plant or something you want to propagate, or could still plant some cruciferous vegetables in the fall garden. Time to harvest those sweet potatoes if you got them. Bees need all the help they can get. It'd be a good time to order seeds for next year in case something crazy happened next spring. Before next spring. Nice to have those be sitting on that sack of seeds just in case. Another thing that just kind of occurred to me last week is this kind of an afterthought for me, because just don't think about it, just do it. Maybe you want to get a hunting license, even if you've never had one. That would serve two things. That might give you some inexpensive meat, and it might serve some home protection needs with the same stone. And just be aware, depending on how old you are and whether you've hunted before, you may have to have a hunter safety course before you can buy a license. That's always a rush every fall to get one, so you might want to look into that if you plan on doing that. And of course, I always suggest that everybody have potassium iodine for everyone in your family, just in case. And kelp, of course.
Maybe some ivermectin too.
Yeah. All of those are readily available nowadays. If you know where to look. You can talk to me later if you need sources for that. So, any progress anybody would like to share of things you've done the last couple of weeks? That
we did fermented salsa verde and checked it today, and it was pretty good.
What did you ferment?
Salsa verde.
And what is pulsa verde?
Tomatillo, jalapeno.
Oh, tomatillo.
Green sauce.
Yep. Verde, I knew it was green, but I had no idea what you were doing.
Yeah. Put it in the food processor, sterilize the jars. And Winston went out and got some grape leaves, and we put those on top of, put one on top. But on the other one, I used glass,
Weights?
sterilized them. But the glass
Mhm.
things that you put in a floral arrangement,
Oh,
and
frog?
had those in a piece of cheesecloth to try and hold it down. And that worked. I was kind of interested to see that the one that had the grape leaf in it had really good gas production. We have a lid that's got a nipple on it that just will let the gases out very small. It's kind of like those baby bottles that just had that round nipple that were flat, and a little weird. It always made me wonder, how does the baby like that one? But it was all bulged up this morning or this afternoon, and gave it a squeeze and let the gases out. But the other one that had the cheesecloth didn't gas up as much. So
Uh-huh.
I don't know how well which did with the full fermentation, but it was palatable. It was really good. Of course, I
Nice.
used the cilantro, the jalapenos, the garlic, the salt, and
So
And,
that's basically like sauerkraut.
like sauerkraut, except
Yeah.
it's using tomatillo instead of tomatoes.
Oh.
And it was like making salsa. But we've also, last year, Winston had, or the year before maybe, he found somebody online that was making up salsa, fermented salsa. And we ate it, I guess so, last winter, didn't we, dear?
Yeah. There
And
may still be
we
one
were able to
jar left.
we put it in the refrigerator, the second refrigerator, but I probably won't ferment all of this salsa. We'll probably can a little bit of it too,
Hmm.
because of the volume of it. But it ended up being good. I've also got some fermented radishes in one of the refrigerators. I don't think either one of us have had the courage to try it yet. Have you, dear?
I've eaten some of them.
Oh, okay.
They kind of turn you off because they turn brown, but
there's all kinds of vegetables you could do a fermentation on.
Yeah.
And it's good probiotic for your gut.
I guess Sam hadn't been doing any wood cutting lately.
No, I've got a tree that is laying in my backyard cut up, but I can't split it, so
Yeah.
I guess I'm gonna rent a splitter. And
Well, talk to Herb first.
does Herb have one that does he have a portable
Yeah.
splitter?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He's offered to he's offered to come by and split some. So
Hey, Sam, normally would you split that with an axe?
Yeah, you can. Well, it's hard oak. It's been sitting there for, gosh, 6 or 7 months. So it'd be awful hard to split, but
Huh. You have a good axe?
oh, I've got a good splitter. I mean, I've got a good maul.
Okay. I can
Yeah.
take a crack at it. I'll give it a try.
Well, I've only got 5 more weeks till I can.
So you can hurt your back again?
yeah.
Doing the
Like-
next thing?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
I've split some of it by hand when it was green. When it was green, I split some of it by hand, but
Yeah, it's great exercise, Dave.
Yeah. I mean, I used to do that in Seattle, but that was 40 years ago. but I'd be curious to try it again. So
I'll pause.
I got something about preparedness
Go ahead.
that, as you know, I've been going through a job search. I'm in between jobs. So I've been intensely looking for a new job and trying to interview and stuff. But one of the things I didn't realize was in terms of preparedness that might help other people is how relatively easy it is to become a substitute teacher in Virginia
Yes.
if you have a college degree. And I didn't even think of it until somebody, I mean, we have a couple of people in our ward, as you know, who either are full-time teachers or retired teachers or substitute teachers. So they know all about it. They do it every day. And I didn't really think of it until they suggested it in July. So at the last minute, I started pulling together documents. And it's really mostly a matter of pulling together your paperwork and getting the forms filled out. And you have to take a couple of short online classes like protection of children and how to report potential abuse, and a few online courses. Do a background check. But once you've got your portfolio and all your papers together and it's submitted, you're in the system, so to speak, as an approved, person. And even if you don't do it full time or even every week, just having all that stuff together and being in their system could help somebody who faces a job loss or who needs to fill in, with a substitute teaching job periodically. That could be very helpful for some people in some situations. And I hadn't really known anything about it, hadn't really thought about it, but it's something I've always thought I'd like to try someday. So that someday has arrived. So I've been kind of doing that here and there in between job interviews and things. And it's been a good experience.
Dave, do you have to fill that paperwork out for each school, or does it at one time do all schools?
You do it once for the district.
Okay.
And some people in our ward want to get themselves ready to teach or substitute in several different districts, like Culpeper and Orange County and Madison County or something. I've only done Culpeper. And my understanding is that different school districts are trying to get their systems to talk to each other better so that somebody can apply in one district and have it count in surrounding districts. I don't think they're there yet, but I'm not sure. But I'm only doing Culpeper because apparently there's such a shortage of not only teachers but substitutes that there's plenty of work to do right now. I mean, if I wanted to, I could substitute teach every single day of the week.
Yeah, Dave, do you know Doug Albach in Culpeper?
No.
He's in the Culpeper ward, but he substitute teaches and seems like he works every day.
Yeah, he enjoyed it.
How do you spell Albach? Is it ALB?
ALBACH.
Albach.
Okay. Yeah, I should connect with him.
Oh yeah.
Get some tips. But as you know, in a lot of counties in the United States, the school district is the largest employer.
Absolutely.
And that is true in many thousands and thousands of counties in the United States.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about it. I'm just a rookie beginner, but I was shocked at how many Spanish language students there were that only speak Spanish. I mean, yesterday I had a third of one of my classes, they didn't speak any English.
Wow.
Wow.
So they're showing me their phone, like, can I go to the nurse's office? They translate on the phone and holding it up to me so I can read that. But it's, my field being adult certifications and credentialing for different industries, it's fascinating for me to see the pipeline of youngsters coming up that'll be coming into my classes in 10 or 20 years to get credentials as an adult learner. See what's coming down the pipeline. But holy cow, But anyway, I just think a lot of church members have skills that may not have thought of, that, hey, this, that may be something they want to, even if they just look at the application and start pulling some documents together, they could apply relatively quickly and get some approvals. And so if they ever do need to do that, they could jump in and see how they like it. They could try it. They might love it. They might hate it. They might learn some good things. And I haven't done, of course, I haven't done a survey or anything, but I keep learning about members of the church who are involved in the school district in one way or another, just like this Doug Albach. I've never heard of him, but I'd like to meet him and talk to him.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of folks in our ward who are currently doing that.
He usually stops by the Family History Center on Wednesday afternoons after he gets out of school.
But I'm impressed he has the strength to do that. Honestly, after I've been in the school all day, I was so exhausted I could barely walk. I'm very impressed.
Well, he doesn't do anything. He just stops by to check on us.
Okay.
His calling is actually supposed to be over it, but I'm really not too sure about how much he actually knows about doing family research. But he's the one that we tell, hey, this is broken, this isn't working, get somebody in here. And so he's that person in the middle.
Okay.
So that's how plus he actually lived in the same ward that I grew up in after I left home.
In Texas?
He and his family lived there. So we've had those connections. In the church, there's 6 degrees of separation in the rest of the world.
Yeah.
In the church, it's a lot closer.
Yeah.
So he's a Texas guy?
Do what?
Is he a Texas guy?
He's actually Utah, but he lived in Texas for a while.
Oh, interesting.
He was a geologist by trade.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Okay.
so this pawpaw here I finally picked today after I've been watching it for months, it seems like. I decided I better get it before the raccoons get it, because I didn't have too many this year. So anyway, something that's available along the stream banks right now that you want to.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you guys, I went to the auction last Tuesday, so a week ago, and I could not believe the number of pawpaws. I have not ever seen pawpaws at the produce auction.
Huh.
This year, there were pawpaws,
Oh,
and I was
That
really
is
surprised
crazy.
at it. Yeah. Tammy's been there with me. You've never seen them either, right?
Never. I have never seen them at the auction.
There were, I don't know, maybe 4 different patches of them. And you weren't talking more than maybe about 4 or 5 quarts per thing, but per offering. They were individuals. They were not being grown commercially, but somebody sent their kid out there to pick them, and pawpaws were there on the market. But they also had pawpaw trees, which we had a discussion about. How sensitive the roots are, and you have to be careful. But these were being grown in a pot. So somebody had put it together to be able to offer pawpaw trees. And you had to buy like 4 of them. And I thought, we can just go ahead and pick off of our own.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome.
there's another market.
Huh.
We're usually the first chestnut trees or chestnuts at the auction in the
Yeah.
fall. So
And muscadines are ready to be picked. Have a pretty good crop of those. And something that we talked about in the spring, I'm sure Sam knows what this is, but
Pokeberries.
yeah.
Yep.
We talked about poke salad in the spring, about picking pokeweed for greens. Well, there's another use for these berries. Most people think they're poisonous, and they probably are if you ate this whole cluster
It's
here.
the seeds that are poison, isn't it?
Yeah.
if you chewed them,
So
right?
So what they recommend you do is pick them this time of the year and just freeze them in a baggie or whatever, and then take them out during the winter. one or two per day and just swallow it whole. Don't chew it. And the seeds will just pass through just like it does with the birds. And you get your medication from it. And supposedly it's real good for arthritis.
Hmm.
I won't vouch for the efficacy of it because I haven't tried it, but
And you don't have arthritis.
well, I mean, I have tried a few of them, but I didn't have any ill effects. So
Have you ever done anything with autumn olive berries?
uh, just eating them.
Yeah. We've the Cedar Mountain Battlefield where I volunteer has got it's just overrun with autumn olive trees, and they make a nice little berry that. And I'm the trail manager at the battlefield,
Uh-huh.
and I've had people call me. My number is listed there on the site, and I've had people call me and say, "Can I pick the autumn olive berries because I make jam and jelly out of them?"
Uh-huh.
And I say, "Yo, pick ahead." But they are they are very tasty.
Yeah. They're a little tart until they get
Well, they're
sure.
sort of like a sour cherry, you know.
Yeah.
But the people that I talked to said they make the jam and jelly out of them. They they do it with like a little sugar and some sure gel, and it supposedly makes very delicious jelly.
Yeah.
Oops.
Well, that's one good thing out of that plant.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a whole movement out in California of people who are dead set against the eradication of the autumn olive tree because of that fact. They use it to make wine and jelly and jam and stuff with, and of course the a lot of public places are trying to eradicate the autumn olive. That's what we're doing at the battlefield, is we're trying to kill it off.
Yeah. And
Because
it is a nitrogen fixer too, so it's good to restore, like mining sites and stuff like that. Poor
oh,
sand.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But it has to be controlled.
good luck with that.
Yeah.
The bears really like them too.
Oh yeah. Well, I was this morning we had a activity at the battlefield with a fellow from the Battlefield Foundation. We were doing invasive species remediation, and so my job was going around and spraying the bottoms of the autumn olive trees with basil oil spray.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost stepped into a big pile of bear scat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was. They're there. They're eating those berries,
Yeah.
and they're abundant. I mean, you could pick a bushel of them in no time.
Yeah, they're getting up into the park too. So I've seen the bears eating them up there several years ago. It's good forage for them.
It's an invasive. It's
Yeah.
listed as an invasive species, so they're trying to get rid of it. As a matter of fact, there's parts of the country where was started up in the mountains regions. The autumn olives have practically eradicated the chinkapins because it grows in the same environment as the chinkapins do.
Yeah.
But it's so much more aggressive growing that it just chokes out the chinkapins, a very slow growing bush.
Well, I can tell you that sheep and goats like to browse them. They'll browse them down to the ground.
Yep.
if you get a fence around it to contain them. Anyway,
Anyway, I'm
anybody
just
reckon-
wondering if anybody had any experience with actually making jam or jelly or anything with them.
No, I never picked that many. Or got to the house with that many anyway.
Yeah, they're good to eat. They're delicious.
Yeah. So anybody figure out what this picture is?
I know.
It looks like some sort of an oven.
Oh, yeah. If I turn sideways, it looks like bread in a solar oven or something.
Yeah, it's a solar oven. I was just gonna bring up that it's been excellent weather for cooking with a solar oven, and it's probably even here in the East, it's probably something everybody ought to have as part of their preparations if they got room to store one, because you can cook without fuel, and this is actually 2 pans of egg whites, believe it or not, that we got in our Mesa run. We got I don't know, like 6 or 8 quarts of egg whites. So we cook them and feed them back to the chickens. But
Huh.
anyway,
It's not feeding them back because we didn't raise that. We didn't
that's true.
hatch those or crack them.
Okay.
But it's a protein source and the birds are happy. And they're still alive after it too. We didn't kill them.
But anyway, you can't. It wasn't a very good photograph, but the oven was like 275 degrees there.
So how does it work? Does it work off of a solar battery or just
No,
Radiant
Off of sunshine.
this
sunshine?
this around here is reflective stainless steel
Yeah.
or aluminum. I'm not sure which, but anyway, so it kind of funnels the sun down into the oven, and then there's a glass lid that goes over it that's open right now.
Plexiglass.
See down
Huh.
into it, and
So-
so it'll get pretty warm in there.
How much does one of those cost?
With the kit and everything, I think they're around $300 now.
We have pans that came with it. You can do a double stack on a couple of the pots, and you could cook a stew, and then also on the double stack, put in cornbread or something on top of that.
Huh.
And it would fit in there on a swing kind of a platform that it can take the angles because you have to change the angle as the sun
Yeah.
is changing in the sky. And so it just keeps it on that swing little shelf, and it'll change the angle so that it'll stay level.
And
Self-leveling.
I had to put this stick in there to because I was on I don't have many flat spots on my ground, so to get it so it wouldn't run over the side of the pans there. But anyway, it's real good for like making hard-boiled eggs. Just put it in a paper carton, put the eggs in a paper carton, and just set them in there, and and they'll just cook in that carton. You can do a dozen at a time, or 2 or 3 dozen at a time.
We get very odd things from the food bank that they can't serve to anybody.
It's a very
They can't
gentle,
give it out.
it's a very gentle cook. You usually won't burn anything, and like you could do a roast or a whole chicken. It's probably going to take most of the day. 5 or 6 hours maybe, but and then you'd have to move it to follow the sun. 2 or 3 times, but anyway,
The question I have is, I understand you probably need really good sunlight, but is there a minimal outside temperature that you have to have? Like it has to be at least 80 degrees outside, or
no,
70?
the temperature is not as critical as, because I've used it in the wintertime when it was quite cold before.
Okay.
But the temperature is not as important as having not clouds, and at minimum you need to be able to see your shadow outside as far as the sun's concerned.
Okay.
anyway, something I thought I'd throw in there. And we had talked a while back about planting a fall garden, and this is the results of one of those. These are whippoorwill peas that I wanted to, more than anything, I wanted to increase the my seed supply, and so I think they're going to make it. We still got at least a month without a frost, I think. So they should. They're about ready to bloom.
They look healthy and happy.
Yeah, they're really taking off. I mean, that's something that does well in hot dry weather.
Now you say whippoorwill peas. Are they like regular shell peas or black-eyed peas or what?
Yeah, like black-eyed types.
Uh-huh.
With the varieties whippoorwill, something I grew up with, and probably my favorite pea. They're not a real extremely heavy producer, like the ones we usually grow are the pink-eyed purple hulls, just because they're easy to pick and shell and stuff, and produce quite readily. These make a little smaller pea, but they're very tasty, either fresh or dried. So I wanted to increase the seed supply of those. I had enough to almost plant a whole bed, but anyway, should have enough to have a mess or two to eat, and have enough seeds to plant a couple of beds next year.
The question begins to be, where I grew up, black-eyed peas were the very common pea to grow. And so he keeps introducing these things, cow peas and whippoorwill, and I didn't grow up eating those.
There's hundreds of varieties,
And what grows best in each area can be very different.
Yeah, and this is what people are used to and what they like. I mean, to me, a plain old black-eyed pea is just really bland, compared to these gourmet peas. But
See, he's advertising, and I think it's false too. But anyway, that's my opinion.
Each to his own or her own.
Well, I've considered growing cow peas before. Are cow peas more prolific than black-eyed peas?
No, black-eyed pea is a cow pea. Just one of many.
Oh, I thought they were bigger than a black-eyed pea. Okay.
Not necessarily. I mean, there's like one common variety that we used to grow a lot of was crowders. There's brown crowders and black crowders and several different kinds. But they produce a big, when they say crowders, that means that they were crowded in the pod, where a black-eyed pea, there's a little space between each one.
Yeah.
And but with the crowders, I mean, they're just bumped up one right against the other, and they're a little bit bigger in diameter than a black-eyed pea also. So from the same, 25-foot row or whatever, you probably get 50% more crowders than you would black-eyed peas, for example, or pink-eyed purple hulls.
I may try those next season.
But some of the southern seed companies, I mean, there's, like I said, there's just hundreds of varieties. Like I grow one for the livestock and for summer cover crop called iron and clay, and it makes a kind of a small pea, but it'll grow where nothing else will, pretty much in the hottest, driest, poorest soil, and they produce nitrogen too for the soil, so it's a good crop to grow, before you were going to grow a winter barley crop or something, like that. So we better get on with our video here. We've had a good discussion on a lot of things, and what I wanted to show tonight is, you store this food and stuff, but sometime you've got to cook it. And how do you cook it? And all of that stuff is kind of important. And what you cook. And there's something going around the internet a while back called survival soup. And doesn't sound real tasty, but it is survival. And this lady brings up a lot of good points about it, because it's kind of similar to to what the church's food storage plan is. And like some of the prophets have told us, it's not designed to keep you fat. It's just designed for survival. And in a life-changing event, you might need more calories and more energy and more protein and more fat than survival would give you. So let's think about those kind of things when we look at this, because you might, if you were trying to produce food and your own food and energy and take care of your place without electricity, you might need 3,000 calories a day, not 12 or 1,500 like a lot of these rations have. So anyway, think about that.
Hi, and welcome to Rose Red Homestead. Lately, I've been going out on the internet doing all kinds of research relative to emergency preparedness. And I happened upon a few sites that talked about a special kind of soup called survivor soup. It has a number of other names. It's Scotch broth, which is not to be confused with the real Scotch broth, or survival bean soup. Several other names were given. And there were some quite interesting claims made relative to this soup. First of all, that you could buy all of the ingredients that you needed to make this soup that a family of 4 could survive on for an entire year. So I decided I wanted to check out those claims, and I will let you know what I found out when we come right back. Survivor soup. And it was pretty amazing that the amounts that were specified on the different websites were pretty close. For instance, rice only varied by 10 pounds. The range was between 80 and 90 pounds of white rice, but everything else was pretty close. 22 pounds of red kidney beans, 22 pounds of lentils, 22 pounds of pearled barley, and then either 5.5 or 6 pounds of split green peas, and the same for garbanzo beans. And I just rounded these to the larger numbers, especially the 5.5 pounds. I wanted to pull it up to an amount that would be easy to buy in, for instance, a 1 pound package. So the first thing I did was to check the claim of, could you buy all of these things for $300, which was the claim. For $300, you could feed your family of 4 for a year just on this soup. Now, granted, you would probably grow really, really tired of this soup if that's all you had for 3 meals a day. But if it kept you alive, I suppose that would be okay. But the first claim, in that you could buy these amounts for all of these ingredients, that bore out. The other ingredients that were also added were beef bouillon and chicken bouillon. Now, all the websites said buy 30 pounds of this. I just thought that was way too much. So I didn't check that out, and I didn't believe it either. So there. And then if you use salt, you would want to also have some salt on hand to flavor this soup. And then basically what you are supposed to do is to mix all of those things together, equally distribute all of the ingredients, and the caution is to wear gloves so you don't break your nails, and mix it in small amounts and then larger amounts and so forth. I have a different suggestion, but nevertheless, that was the original suggestion for most of these, the websites. And then all you would need to do when it came time to make the soup was to use this recipe. And this is a 2-day recipe. And that would be, by weight, you would measure out 16 ounces of the soup mix, and you would mix that with 6 to 7 quarts of water. And when I made it, I elected to use the 6 quarts of water. Less water makes the soup just a little bit more thick. And then, of course, you'd flavor it with salt and bouillon, and then you would simmer that for 2 hours until the beans were soft. All right, so now I have a problem with these directions as well, but I'll get to that in just a minute. So the first claim that you could buy these ingredients, and together all of these pounds of these 6 ingredients equals 168 pounds of product. And that would give you about 168 pots of soup using this recipe. And so that would, a family of 4, and adding 6 quarts of water would give you 24 cups of soup, about, more or less, not counting the displacement that the ingredients would make in that 24 cups of soup. And that would be enough for 3 cups of soup for 4 people per day. Now, the big question is, would that keep you alive? And so for me, that was the most important claim that I wanted to check. So I found a website that gave me the calorie counts for every one of these in terms of dry, not cooked, but the dry amounts. And I used the ounce weight because everything here is by weight. And so I calculated the calories that would be present in this 2-day recipe of soup. And I calculated it in terms of per cup. All right, now, here is the big surprise. 1 cup of this soup, made just exactly the way it is right here, would give you 67 calories. 67 calories. Now, times that by 3, and that's about 200 calories a day. How many of us could survive even if we led a sedentary lifestyle and were couch potatoes? Would we be able to survive on 200 calories a day? The answer is absolutely no. We could not live, and pretty soon our bodies would start wasting away. Our bodies would want to use the protein in our muscles, including our heart muscle, to get the protein that they needed for the cells, and so on and so forth. So it won't work. You will absolutely need to add additional ingredients to this basic soup mix if you are a family of 4 and you hope to survive. Now, interestingly enough, all of the websites also said that. Add extra ingredients, they say, whatever you might have on hand. Well, unless you plan for what you need to have on hand to add to a soup like this, then you're going to be at a loss to have maybe the correct ingredients that you might need. Also, I calculated the protein that is for 1 cup of the soup. Are you ready for this? A whopping 2 grams of protein. So not only are there not enough calories in 1 cup of soup to sustain life, there's really not enough protein. Now, I like all of these ingredients, and when I made the soup, it was very tasty, especially after adding the bouillon. But I added some other things as well after we tasted the soup in its original form. So one of the things that I would suggest is beef chunks. Adding a pint of beef chunks to the recipe would bump the calories up to 100 calories per cup. Now that's not a huge bump, but it's a little bit. But if you've also stocked your emergency supply shelves with other things, you could have some kind of a bread with it, or a quart of fruit, and home canned fruit, and that would bump it up. So the bottom line is, this survival soup is really a good idea, provided you do not rely on it and only it to survive. That would be kind of a dangerous thing. Now, also, there was one more really interesting thing. You might notice that when we break it apart, the amount of kidney beans and the amount of garbanzo beans is very small. Rice is the filler in this soup. You use more rice, obviously 90 pounds of rice compared to 22 pounds compared to 6 pounds and 6 pounds. So I proportioned it down to where I was able to calculate in one recipe how many kidney beans were in a pot of soup and how many garbanzo beans. And in 1 cup of soup, provided everything is equally distributed, you would have exactly 4 kidney beans and either 2 or 3 garbanzo beans. Now, interestingly enough, the split peas have the most protein. Next are the chickpeas and the kidney beans. And I forgot, I think maybe the lentils were next. And so if I were doing this for my family, I would not use such a small amount of those beans. I would increase the amount of kidney beans and increase the amount of chickpeas in there as well. I also would change the way that this was cooked. Several comments on some of these sites indicated that by putting the rice in at the very beginning and then simmering it for 2 hours, just turned the rice to mush. Well, duh, of course it would. That's about 4 times too long to cook rice, maybe even 5 times too long. So a number of people suggested that you hold the rice out until the last 20 minutes, which I think is a great idea. So I would also change, because fuel is going to be at a premium. If we are truly in an emergency situation, are we really going to want to simmer this soup for 2 hours using fuel when it does not even provide enough nutrition to sustain life for very long? I don't think so.
Maybe in a
So how could we cut that down? Now, this can be used very efficiently because it is so inexpensive to stretch our food budgets for emergency preparedness. And having this soup 3 or 4 times a month would be great. But we don't want it to use up all of our fuel either. And so I would soak these 2 overnight or for several hours. And then I would pre-cook only these 2 for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then I would add everything together except the rice. And then when I got ready to put the rice in, I would also put my beef chunks. I would also put dehydrated celery, which I have a lot of, dehydrated carrots as well, or whatever else we might have on hand. Now, there were a couple of warnings on these websites, and one of them was that this soup provides all of the amino acids that we need. I did not check that claim because I rejected this on the premise that it would sustain life at all. I will be adding other things, and so I didn't worry too much about the amino acids. There's also no dairy here, but the word was on the websites that you need to add a multivitamin and some dairy to this as well, which makes a lot of sense to me. So you would want to do that. In some ways, these claims reminded me just a little bit of that children's story about nail soup. Do you remember that? A soldier, a stranger, comes into a village and he's hungry and he wants something to eat and nobody will share with him. So he takes out his pot and fills it with water and he drops a nail in. And the villagers come around and they say, "What are you cooking?" And he said, "Oh, I'm cooking nail soup. It is so delicious."
I thought it was stone.
And so you're welcome to have some if you have something to bring to contribute. And one by one, the villagers brought vegetables, potatoes, meat, all different kinds of things. And before they knew it, they had this pot of really wonderful, hearty, nutritious soup. So, in a way, these ingredients are like the nail. That is what attracts all of the other things that you may want to put in the soup pot to actually make it nutritious and would sustain life. So I am going to cook up a pot of this soup the way I would do it. And then we will come back and I will show you what it looks like. I'm going to increase the kidney beans. I'm going to increase the garbanzo beans. I'm going to add beef, and I'm also going to add my dehydrated celery and onions and carrots. One more precaution that I read on some of the websites was to not add onion if you do not have refrigeration, because the onion will spoil very quickly. And if you want to hold this recipe for 2 days without refrigeration, the onion would spoil. Well, I wouldn't hold it for 2 days without refrigeration with the meat in it either. And so, of course, use good common sense. And if it was only the onion I would worry about, which I don't know if that's valid or not. I did not check that. But one of the things you could do with dehydrated onion is after you heat the soup up, just crumble some of the dehydrated onion on the top. It's nice and crunchy and would add a nice flavor anyway. So we will be back in a few hours when I have some of the actual soup to show you. I'm going to give you a quick rundown on exactly how I cooked this soup. First of all, I had pre-soaked the beans and in a very small saucepan, and so in times of emergency I could use just a little bit of flame over a wood fire or a propane fire just to pre-cook those for about 15 minutes. Then I added all the other ingredients except the rice and the add-ins to the pot and added the 6 quarts of water, and I allowed that to cook for about 40 minutes. Then for the last 20 minutes, I added a pint of beef chunks. I added some dehydrated celery, some onions, because I have refrigeration and so I'm fine with that, and some carrots. And so the whole cooking time took exactly 1 hour, not counting the pre-cooking of the beans. So that would be 1 hour in the big pot and about 15 minutes in a little small pot. I did take some still pictures of the different phases of the cooking experience, and I'm going to insert those right now, and then we'll come back in just a few seconds and talk more. And so here we see the results of the soup. Here it is, all set out. And so you can see it is soup. It's a very nice hearty soup. And I have paired that or set it up with some home canned peaches and some of my artisan bread that was made with Polish. And so this would be a very nice supper meal. I'm going to figure out a way how to bake bread off-grid, and as soon as I have perfected that, I'll be doing a video on off-grid bread baking. Now, one of the things that I realized very early on when I started making this soup was that I will not mix these ingredients together. I will store these separately because I want the flexibility of using them in different kind of arrangements. I may put this particular recipe together and in a pint jar and use that for one of my meals in bags. I do want to show you the recipe that I used. These are the ingredients of the 2-day recipe if I'm using the original recipe. So it's 8 ounces of rice, which is about 1 1/4 cups. It is 2 ounces of kidney beans, 2 ounces of pearl barley, 2 ounces of lentils, 1 ounce of split green peas, and 1 ounce of garbanzo beans, and you can see the volume measurements of those in parentheses off to the side. And then the instructions are soak both beans overnight or for several hours and pre-cook for 20 minutes. I only did it for 15. Add remaining ingredients except rice and simmer for 45 minutes. Add rice and extras and simmer for 20 minutes. So it's about a 1 hour procedure to do this. And it works just fine. So I think that we have taken this survival soup and turned it into something that is very usable in our food storage for times of emergencies. So try this recipe. I think you will like it.
Okay. You like it?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a great video. I mean, and she answered my first question was, hey, don't all those beans have protein in them? And then she immediately answered the question, yeah, the recipe calls for so few of them that it doesn't help much. So she was changing it up. So that was a very good video. I'm very happy to see that website. I had no idea they existed. So thanks for sharing that resource.
Yeah, it was interesting. I thought I was kind of disappointed in the way it was presented originally before she broke it down and brought up the things that would make it actually survivable. One thing I was going to bring up on this was, well, I talked about it before, how much protein and calories do you really need in a time of crisis? And, she pretty much covered that too, but, I suspect, well, I think I need about 3,000 calories a day now, and a lot of these pre-mixed food, packets, like, these food buckets, the people that have these 30-day buckets or 2-week buckets or whatever that you can buy. A lot of those, are like 1,500 calories a day, and to get you to 30 days. And so it's just not going to cut it. And
You'd fade away.
so,
Well, I was thinking I need to start eating that right now to lose some weight.
yeah.
I mean, I need to make that up.
But anyway, things that I thought, and she said some of these things that I thought you could add to this, of course, was meat. If you had some canned meat, or if you were able to get a deer and turn most of it into jerky. Jerky will, if you dry it down enough, it'll keep for years and years, and that would make a nice stew if you added cut up jerky pieces into it, and then cook it for an hour or so with the jerky in there. It would soften it up and be quite palatable. So something to think about as a plus for jerky. It could be added to a lot of things.
The other thing that she mentioned that I appreciate is I also store everything at its lowest component. So by taking all those ingredients and making a huge vat of dry soup mix, she said at the end that she would not do that. And I agree with that. I would keep my pinto beans separately, and then I can do refried beans with it, or I can do something else with other beans or with the split peas, or instead of making this huge vat of something that is only that. Even though she added extra things to it, it would still represent the same thing. So I'm fairly picky about what I eat and how often I will eat it. I'm a non-leftover lover. So to look at like this huge bucket full of beans and seasoning, and that's what you're going to live on, just makes my soul cringe. I just couldn't do it. But to have it broken up in different components, that's way easier for me to be creative and make something else with it.
That, and if you mix it up, that the lightest weight, the bouillon is going to drop to the bottom of the container anyway. So every time you would either have to stir it up, and that's a mess, or whatever else, you'd have to package it in very small packages already to that exact amount. I agree with you, Tammy.
Yep.
And think about the rice. The rice could be used for a dessert dish instead of a savory dish, if you had it separate. And,
sticky rice.
Yeah, with mangoes.
Freeze-dried mangoes. Rehydrated.
And one other thing she did not mention, that what are the major food groups did we leave out?
Dairy.
Well, yeah, dairy's left out, but I don't think dairy's essential necessarily, but there was no fat.
Oh yeah, I was thinking that. Now, one of the things that if you are doing and you do store your olive oil, is the chefs are always drizzling olive oil on top of their soups, the fresh soups and everything that are made with fresh vegetables and everything. But that was something that really struck me. That just doesn't have the ability to carry over satiation.
Do they do that? do they drizzle the olive oil after they cook the soup?
Just as you're serving, you drizzle olive oil on top of your soup, and it just adds to the flavor and the
Oh.
depth of it.
I did not know
That's
that.
what all of the cooking shows I have been watching have done.
But
That's cool. I never heard of
but olive oil will keep 2 years at the most.
Mm.
We
So-
just have to use all of our olive oil all the time.
so-
Start drizzling.
so-
Start
so I-
drizzling.
so
Chart
I-
drizzling.
So I come back to only two long-term fats that you can store. And one is coconut oil and the other one is lard. And some people cringe at lard, but depending on the
And-
source of your lard, it can be very good and it can last up to 7 or 8 years.
Ooh. And anybody wants to come and butcher a pig, they can get lard this winter.
Okay. I grew up on lard. I didn't know there was anything but lard.
I'll help do that just for the learning process of it if you need help.
Yeah, we do have a 2 or 3 lard pigs that need to be done first this year that didn't get done last spring before it warmed up. But anyway, gotta find somebody that's going to kill 6 deer this winter and needs something to make it more palatable.
That's Kyle.
No,
Kyle could come over and help us butcher.
closer to home.
Well, he's no longer bishop. He'll have time. He can bring the Hispanic people from the Spanish branch over, and they'd be happy to help us with that, I bet.
Hmm. Anyway,
That's the guess what they're going to call him too.
anyway, the other thing I thought about was a protein powder of your choice. Might be a good thing to store to add to this mixture to up the protein. If you didn't have canned meat or jerky, a protein powder might be in order.
Well, that's an interesting thought.
But you have to be very careful when you get into protein powders. You don't want to get anything with inulin in it because it's got a very embarrassing
Well, there shouldn't be-
quality to it.
Inulin's not a protein.
Well, it's not, but protein powder has got it in there. Any of the protein powders I've looked at has got inulin in it. And that's why I haven't bought any more protein powder because it has a very disrupting capability on my digestive tract.
Gotcha. My protein powder is chocolate flavored, which might really ruin the soup.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or
It would not
enhance
do well
it.
with the soup.
there again, another reason to store your components separately.
Yeah.
Anyway, the other thing I thought about was what the Indians and the frontiersmen used a lot of was pemmican. But y'all familiar with that?
Say that word again.
Pemmican?
Pemmican. Pemmican. Pemmican, I think it is. How you spell it?
Yeah.
I may be wrong, but
No,
it is a
That's the correct spelling.
okay.
The Indians made it with and the Daniel Boone types made it with usually venison, which they would dry into jerky, and then they would pound. They'd cut it across the grain, then they would pound it out into basically a powder, and then they would add some kind of berries, like these. What Sam was just talking about would be great berries to go in it. And then,
Hawaiian berries.
yeah, then they would add bear fat or tallow, buffalo tallow out west, but bear fat in the east, and mix all that up, and it has a very long shelf life because of the fat and the dryness, and plus it has a high protein, high fat, and high calorie from the berries. So it's a food all to itself, but it would be something that you could add to one of these things and boost the protein and the fat at the same time. So Anyway,
So if anybody's interested in turkey jerky, you could make some of that probably this fall too.
yeah. I got a tongue that needs to be jerked right now.
It looks like you can buy pemmican. People make it and sell it.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Another one I've
It
learned.
probably has a little bit of cost to it too, what people have made.
I think you're right. $9 for one bar.
Yeah.
Well, I can't believe how much they charge for jerky nowadays too, you know. I mean,
Yeah, $9 for a 2-ounce pemmican, bar. It looks like a granola bar size,
wow.
We had a brother that was in the ward that was making jerky years ago, and he was providing it to places that were like people going up into the park in Sperryville. People would stop and pick up snacky type stuff to do their little jaunt in the park. And he had quite a variety of jerkies that he was making.
Huh.
Do you remember him?
Yeah, I can't remember his name at this point,
But he was quite the business person with that. He
seemed
had
like
some really good product.
seemed like it
So
started
was
with
he just
it.
marinating it
Yeah,
in
he had all
different
kinds-
flavors? Is
He
that
had all
what?
kinds of recipes and flavor, and it seemed like his name started with a S. Like
It'll come to us tomorrow morning.
almost like salvo or something like that.
No, not in it. I just don't know what it was, but that wasn't it.
So
Yeah,
I'm
he must have
letting
been gone
Norma-
by the time we came.
He was. But he had quite a product line.
So do we want to go back to water or save that for next week to rehash that again?
Next week.
Well, everybody ought to research out something about water.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And
Yeah.
that way we can all add something else, whether it's a question or it is an actual point that you've been able to research out. Everybody come up with something that we can discuss.
Or
Surprise everybody else.
everybody come up with a solution, and then we can pick and choose and decide what would work best for our own applications, maybe. 'Cause, like,
Does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'll be on next week, but yeah, that sounds great.
Well, it will be recorded.
Yep, perfect. Perfect.
okay, well, thanks to everybody for coming out and participating.
Thanks for doing this.
Turn off the recording right quick, and then we can have a close out.